bigger. We can't make it smaller. It's there. The Tao makes us bigger. It gives us life. We can't do anything to the Tao. Lao Tzu says the Tao is empty. But in using it, it never drains. How is the Tao used? It's the wellspring of life, ancestor of all things that live. So it's empty, but it never drains. So if it drains, something comes out of the Tao. What is it that comes out of the Tao? Life itself, the origins of life, the duration of life, the cessation of life. Life comes from the Tao. Lao Tzu says you can look for it, but you can't see it because the Tao is invisible. You can listen for it, but you can't hear it because it's inaudible. You can try to touch it, but you can't feel it because it's intangible. So these three, it's invisible. You can't see it, you can't hear it, you can't touch it. He says there's nothing more we can say about it, but it's together as the one. This is another word for the Tao. It's the one. It brings together what you can't see, what you can't hear, what you can't touch. And you can't get over the top, and you can't see underneath its bottom. It's boundless. Everything is the Tao, and there's no name for it. How can we talk about this? This is life itself, right? Hold on to this ancient Tao of antiquity. So after he says all this, he says you can't touch it, you can't hear it, you can't see it, but hold on to it. How do you hold on to something that you can't see, touch, or feel? It's everywhere. We'll see about that. All right. So now I want to talk about Lao Tzu's philosophy of the Tao. I'm going kind of quick, but I'm also very quick. So Lao Tzu's philosophy of the Tao. Now, I want to say that if you've read the Tao Te Ching, you're familiar with this first line of the Tao Te Ching, Tao Ke Tao Fei Chong Tao. So we talk about the Chong Tao. Chong is a term that means permanent, constant, eternal. But that's not what Lao Tzu said. We have ancient editions of the Tao Te Ching from Guodian, from Mawangui, talking about really old tombs. Now, Lao Tzu doesn't call it Chong Tao. He doesn't call it a constant Tao or permanent Tao. That comes later. But Lao Tzu talked about, he called it the Hong Tao. Hong is a very different word. Later in Chinese history, a couple, like a century or 2 centuries, whatever, after Lao Tzu, Hong and Chong changed its meaning to become the same as Chong, constant, eternal. But when Lao Tzu wrote the Tao Te Ching, he didn't have that meaning in mind. What he meant by Hong was that the Tao is not constant. What Lao Tzu says is the Tao temporalizes. The Tao includes temporality, time itself. The Tao is time. Sounds a lot like Heidegger. Heidegger said, being is time. Basically, Lao Tzu says the same thing. Tao is time, but it's not time as we understand it. It's temporality. It's the diffusion of the movements of time. I call it temporal fluxing. Fluxing means going back and forth. So if you imagine time as a living thing that goes out and comes back and goes this way or that way, much like Lao Tzu describes the Tao. Lao Tzu says the Tao can go this way, that way, can't get over it, can't. That's temporality, that's time itself. This is how Lao Tzu understood the Tao. So Lao Tzu says the Tao temporalizes, or the Tao is itself temporalization, but it does so without intention. So this notion of without intention, it's really interesting to compare that to Western notions of the absolute, from what the world comes, life comes, it's God. It's some variation. And think about God, because God has an intention. God said, I will create the world. The Tao has no intention. When the Tao gives birth to the world, but it's not through a decision. I will now give birth to the world. It's spontaneous, is a term that the Tao Te Ching uses. It just happens by itself. The world just comes from the Tao. And he says the great Tao pervades everything is present everywhere. So in this sense, we're going to see that Hashang Wong, when he talks about the metaphysics of the Tao, he has in mind this thing that you can kind of contain. You can contain it in your idea, and it's outside of the world, and it's there, and it gives us the world. But this is not the temporalizing Tao. The temporalizing Tao, it's not a thing. In fact, I like to think of the temporalizing Tao as a verb, not as a noun. So we always say the Tao, right? The constant Tao. When we talk about the Tao in Lao Tzu, or the verb Taoing, the Taoing of temporality, or something like that, right? And it's everywhere. So it's not one place, it's not another. It's every single place. So if you imagine a field and every blade of grass that you see coming out of the ground, that's an instance of the Tao. Every leaf on a tree, that's the Tao as a verb. Every tree, every cherry on the tree, every one of you, everything is an instance of the Tao. That moment expressing its temporality. So if you want to look at the Tao, lots of says you can't really see the Tao, but you can see other things. So if you try to look at the world from the perspective of nothingness, see the mystery of life, right? To see how things come forth. Or you can look at the world from the things that exist to witness how things are, right? So if you're in a room, you have a door, and if the door is open, there's an emptiness. So if you look at it, imagine the emptiness that makes the room. Or you can look at the wall, and there's the somethingness of the room. So he says, the myriad things, all the 10,000 living things bursting forth. Imagine every blade of grass, every tree, every leaf on a tree. They come bursting forth into the world. That's the Tao in action, right? That's the mystery, when things burst forth into life, or when things contract back into death. That's the mystery of the nothingness of the Tao. And Lao Tzu says, when I see them bursting forth, blade of grass, a cherry on a tree, a little baby, I also see their return. Everything flourishes in life, and everything returns to the root. This is called tranquility. There's pretty intense understanding of the Tao from Lao Tzu. Okay, so another part of Lao Tzu's philosophy of the Tao, he has a philosophy of the Tao that's kind of looked at that. And he also has notions of bodily cultivation. Chinese, the term is yang means to feed your life, or to feed life, to nurture life. And so this is a central part of what Lao Tzu says. Taking care of life. And he says, take care of your own life as well. So how do you take care of your own life? Well, Lao Tzu talks about it in terms of yangshan. So what is yangshan? How do you feed your life? The best way to feed your life is with this thing called qi. You can generally understand qi as something like oxygen. But if you think of oxygen, don't think of it as a chemical. Think of it as all the things that is in oxygen, right? All the things that give us life, right? I mean, you can blow up a balloon and it gets big, say, okay, there's air in there, but if you try to breathe that, you're going to suffocate and die. That's not oxygen. Oxygen itself, it surrounds us everywhere, filled with all of the nutrients of life. Lao Tzu says, feed on that. How do you do that? You do that not by sitting down like a Buddhist and like that. Lao Tzu says, no, man, you got to move it through your body. You got to move your body when you breathe. Stretch that qi up and down, in and out. So Lao Tzu says, if you bend your body becomes intact. Lao Tzu says, if you can twist your body is straight. Remember, you're circulating qi through everything. He says, if you empty your body, empty all of that bad air, all of that bad stuff in your body. Body's going to become full of good stuff. Because if you exhaust yourself, it leads to renewal. So I understand this. I mean, I used to play basketball and I love to go running. When I'm done, I say, oh. But then as soon as I feel better than I have in a long time, right? That's that exhausting yourself and you renew yourself. And if you reduce these things, bad things, then you get more and more and more. But too much leads to delusion, right? So for this reason, the sage holds to the one. Now, what's the one? We know that's the Tao. And he's the model of the world. So what do we learn about the sage? Some people say, oh, the sage is the ruler. Not for Lao Tzu. For Lao Tzu, the sage is a master of Yangsheng. He's a master of Qigong, is another Chinese word, means the same thing. He's a master of assisting life. Lao Tzu says, end of your life, your body will never be exhausted. Well, Lao Tzu likes to talk about long life, living Babai Swaya, right? 800 years old, maybe more than that too. He says if you open your hole, what are your holes? Your eyes, your nose, your mouth, your ears, your arms, your hands, body, and just do all this stuff. Why are you doing this stuff? To the end of your life, there's no saving your body. I'm going to turn into what he describes here. This is the last thing I'm going to look at. Lots of bodily cultivation. When people are born, they're pliant and supple. Take a baby. Have you ever seen, you like pretzels, right? You know what a pretzel is, this thing. You can do that to a baby because they don't break. Tie babies up in little knots, you know, put them in your hair, like a hair decoration, bend them, twist them. Because they bend like this. They're supple and they're pliant. But when they're dead, they're hard. They grow up old and rigid. Like, doesn't matter how old you are. You can be like, or you can even be 40 and you're dry. Your body is dry. If you fall down, there's no choice. You're gonna get up with broken bones because your body is so dry. There's no exercise. There's no chi in your body. But if you keep that chi going, you fall down, you just bounce right up, just like a baby. When all the living things and the grasses and trees are alive, they're the same way. Like if you ever go out to a park and you want to make a fire, you know, barbecue some hot dogs or something. So you're getting wood. You get that old wood. Because if you try to get new wood, it's not only that it won't burn in your fire, you can't even break it off the tree because the sap, the juice in the newborn trees, they're like, get away from me, dude, you can't take me. But when they're dead, the trees and grasses are dry and growing. Lao Tzu says this is what happens exactly to human bodies. So those who are pliant and supple are companions of life, but if you're rigid and hard, you're going to die. Same thing. If you're a soldier and you're rigid, you're going to be killed, right? Only the soldier who can bend, who can react. The tree is rigid, it will break. This is why pliancy and softness are superior to hardness and rigidity. Okay. Well, we're going to look at our next guy. His name is He Shanggong. About 600 years, 700 years after Lao Tzu. I don't have a lot of time, so I'm not going to talk about all the changes that happened from the spring and autumn period when Lao Tzu lived to the Eastern Han Dynasty when He Shanggong lived. But let me say that Lao Tzu has a tradition of Taoism. I like to call it Yangsheng Taoism. And He Shanggong has a tradition of Taoism. Maybe it's a term you've heard. It's called Huang Lao Taoism. And Huang Lao Taoism started in the end of the Warring States. These were the people who heard about Lao Tzu's Hongdao, about Lao Tzu's temporalizing Dao. And they were really excited by this notion, but they didn't completely buy it. And so they changed the meaning of Hong to constancy and permanency. And they said that the Tao doesn't temporalize, doesn't do anything. The Tao is constant. The Tao is permanent. The Tao is eternal. And so what they did, they took the Tao and turned it into a metaphysical entity, right? And Ho Shanggong, many years later, after the beginning of Huang Lao, he has the first edition of the Tao Te Ching with a complete commentary of Huang Lao philosophy that we have. Huang Lao Taoists were looking and reading the Tao Te Ching the whole time, lots of centuries even before Ho Shanggong, but we don't have any of their books. Ho Shanggong, it's not the first book. There's another book called by Yan Zun, about 100 years before Ho Shanggong, but Ho Shanggong is our first. So that's when we read Ho Shanggong's philosophy of the Tao. Now the Tao has become a metaphysical entity. The Tao, Tao, Fei, Chong, Tao. So it's no longer a temporalizing verbal presence in the world. Now it's something transcendent, right? It exists on a transcendental plane. Talks about the nameless, the origin of heaven and earth, and the name is mother of the myriad beings. Ho Shanggong identifies the nameless as Wu Ling. Wu means to be without a name. He identifies this with the Tao. He says it's the origin of heaven and earth. In other words, the Tao existed before heaven and earth, and from the Tao, heaven and earth originated. But it's nameless, which kind of means it's eternal. The Tao has always been there, right? So that when you have heaven and earth, go to the cosmology, the very beginning of the world, the very beginning of anything, the very beginning of time itself, then the living things. And Ho Shanggong identifies this with what is named Yo Ming. In other words, all the things that exist, right? So this is not the Tao. This is the Tao. Creates heaven and earth, but then it still continues to exist. How does he talk about this? He talks about this. This is a very famous chapter of Tao. Tao Sheng Yi, Sheng Er, Sheng Zai, Sheng Huang. Tao gave birth to one, one gave birth to two, two gave birth to three, three gave birth to myriad things, 10,000 things that carry yin and yang, yang on their backs and embrace yin. With lighting of chi, they arrived at a state of harmony. What does this mean? It means in the beginning, there was no beginning. For eternity, the Tao existed. And then at some point, the movements of the Tao gave birth to the One. We think this is chi, the stuff which is filled with life. And then the chi was moving around inside the body of the Tao. And then the chi separated into two. It's not that the one gave birth to the two, but the one separated into the two. So if you think of the Tao as mother, breathing out, breathing in, the chi moved outward, and then the chi moved inward. And then this caused two different kinds of movements of chi. One was light and airy, and the other, if you inhale, was dark and dark and light and heavy, dark and whatever. So we call this yin and yang. Qi separates into yin and yang. Now, the yang qi, which is bright and airy, it ascended. And the yin qi, which is dark and heavy, it descended. And then they form heaven and earth. And in the middle, the qi that was yin and yang still intermingled. So you have now three realms of life. You have heaven, which is pure yang qi, sun, moon, planets, stars, outer space itself. And then you have the world, which is yin qi, water, mountains, plants, everything like that. And in between, you have things that are living, human beings. And so the three, heaven, earth, in the middle area, gave birth to all living things. And in between heaven and earth. So the myriad of beings, 10,000 things that exist, they carry yin on their backs and they embrace yang, and their chi is blended inside, they attain a state of harmony. This is an interesting thing. It means that there are three different kinds of chi. There's the yang chi from heaven. So imagine a baby being born, right? In the normal way, whatever normal is. But baby comes out head first, their head is facing up, right? So, and they're embracing yang from heaven. And they come out of the mother, they're on their backs. So they have the yin chi of earth below them. And then throughout their body, they have the chi, which is not mixed, it's yin and yang, blending of yin yang chi, and their harmonies. This is the cool thing about Taoism, right? You know, if you're Christianity, it's like, if you're Christian, babies are not so beautiful, right? They're born into this thing called original sin, the thing that every human being inherits from Adam and Eve, right? So you're sinful, and you gotta like somehow convert out of that state. But for Taoism, they say that's ridiculous. Babies are the most beautiful things that have ever been on the world. They're pure, they're innocent, they're so harmonious. I think, yeah, I get what you're saying, but every time I'm around a baby, they make a lot of noise and they don't really sound harmonious to me. But I say, I get your point. So Lao never really talked about government, but How Shanggong did. When you have a metaphysics of the God, you definitely a lot to say about government. King rules everything. He's got to have that relationship with God. So that's one of the most important things Hush talks about is government. I'm not going to say a lot, but the existence of the supremely high is not known. So he's talking about below them are those who are loved and praised. He's talking about categories of rulers. The highest ruler exists, but he's so perfect, you don't even know he's there. Because his connection with the Tao. The ruler literally does nothing. Wu Wei. And everything is ordered just because that king is plugged into the Tao. Below that are rulers who you can love and praise, shake their hand, get their autograph, they talk to you, but they're not exactly one with the Tao like the highest. Below them, there are rulers who are feared. Right? Below them are rulers who are loathed. Know what those rulers are like. Those are the rulers who like tax you to death. Can't keep any food yourself because you can't get on, right? So when trust is insufficient, there's no trust below. So this is Shanggong's political philosophy, which comes directly from his philosophy of death. He says, his respect for speaking, the highest king, reticent, he doesn't say anything. Yeah. His merit completed, he's brought absolute peace and order to the world. His work is done, perfect world. But people don't even know he's there. He's like, we are natural by ourselves, right? Shanggong's perfect. Okay, now we're going to talk about the Xiang'er. The Xiang'er is an edition of the Tao Te Ching, and it has its own commentary. If Lao Tzu has a tradition of Taoism, it's called Yangsheng. He Sheng Gong has a tradition of Taoism called Huang Lao. Then the Xiang'er Tao Te Ching has a tradition of Taoism called Tian Shi, means celestial masters. It's a religion. It's a religion. It's a Taoist. Is what we mean when we say, oh, Taoist philosophy or Taoist religion. This is Taoist religion, right? It formed right around the same time as He Sheng Gong, which is really cool, right? You have this one guy, He Sheng Gong, who's like this intense Taoist philosopher doing this like high level metaphysics. Then you get these other guys, actually kind of the guy who's kind of traditionally associated with the Xiang'er. His name is Zhang Daoling. He's the guy that founded the Celestial Masters Taoist religion. They were kind of at the same time, but they were, He Sheng Gong is this intense metaphysician, and Zhang Daoling is this prophet, right? And they're both talking about exactly the same thing, the Tao Te Ching, but they're saying entirely different things about it, right? So this is the Xiang'er philosophy. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on any of these guys. I mean, I'm giving you like almost a full semester of study in an hour and a half of this lecture, but we can do what we can. And so one thing that the Xiang'er has its own edition of the Tao Te Ching with its own commentary. It's an amazing thing. We only found it about 100 years ago. It was buried and we lost it. And then when we found it, we didn't even find the whole thing. We excavated it from the cave Dunhuang out in Xi'an, right? They have all those libraries in those caves. Found it there. Even though this text stopped circulating after the Han Dynasty, it was replaced, it was lost. The whole history behind it's not get into. The ideas continued full throughout the traditions of Taoist religion to this day. So if we remember chapter 14 from Tao Te Ching, when Lao Tzu said you can't hear it, see it, or touch it, and they merge together as the one. The Tao is the one. This is what the Xiang'er says. How do we understand the one? So the Xiang'er says the one is the Tao. Okay, we know that. The one exists beyond heaven and earth. Okay. Metaphysics, we understand that. Where does the Tao exist in your human body? Says it enters the Tao, enters the space between heaven and earth, and it comes and it goes inside your body. That's where it is. It's not in any one place. It's everywhere within your skin, not in a single space. So the Tao is the one. The one disperses its form as qi. So this is the qi that we breathe, blah, blah, blah. And it gathers its form as the most high Lord Lao, Tai Shan Lao Jun, lives on Mount Kunlun. So Tai Shan Lao Jun, so we know Lao Tzu by his name Lao Tzu, but he became a god of the Taoist religion. And they didn't call him Lao Tzu, they called him Lao Jun, which means Lord. And then they gave him a title, Tai Shan. He's the highest. Not only Lao Tzu, the old man who wrote this book, Tao Te Ching, not only is he a god, he's the Tao. Lao Jun is the Tao. And the Tao Te Ching is the book that he gave us, the God. He created the world, Lao Jun. He lives on Mount Kunlun. Well, that's his vacation house, right? So here we have a religion. We have the central deity of the Taoist religion, of the original Taoist religion, was himself Lao Tzu, right? And this is a religion, right? So you have a lot of rules. So they have precepts. These are religious rules. Other parts of the Xiang'er says, now that the precepts of Lao Tzu gave us rules. What are the rules? Lao Tzu, they're taken directly from the Tao Te Ching itself. It says, Lao Tzu talks about reducing your desires. It's more like a suggestion, right? But in the Taoist religion, it becomes a precept. Reduce your desires. It's not like try to reduce your desires. It's like reduce your desires. They take these phrases from the Tao Te Ching and they collected them into a set of religious rules that you must live by. Now the precepts of the Tao, everybody knows them now. Go out and instruct people. Those who keep the precepts and don't break them, transgress them, you've maintained the Tao. You're pure, you're good. Those who do not practice the precepts will lose the Tao and die. Okay. So here I've set up 4 different ways that we can understand the Tao. The first is from Confucius, first is from Lao Tzu, second is from He Shangong, fourth is from Xiang'er. We see a social Tao, we see a bodily health Tao, we see a metaphysical Tao, and now we see a religious Tao. So this brings us to the end of the first part of this lecture. I'm going to take a 5-minute break and then run out, drink some water, catch my breath, and I'm going to come back in about 6 minutes, and then we can continue. Do you want to put this on break launcher? Okay, we'll see you in about 6 minutes.
在6分钟的休息时间，然后6分钟之后我再。
This is most of Tao Te Ching chapter 25, not all of it. I couldn't fit it all. Anyway, I'm not going to talk about all of it. And I'm going to, hold on a second. I'm going to look at the 3 different ways that this chapter has, parts of this chapter have been interpreted. So the beginning of the chapter, and by the way, we're going to, the Lao Tzu and He Shangong and the Xiang'er, they have different texts. So I'm going to say one other thing about He Shangong. When we read the Tao Te Ching today, 99% of the time, it's He Shangong's edition. And you say, no, I'm reading Wang Bi's edition. Wang Bi's edition is He Shangong's edition. He Shangong, when he finished writing his commentary and his edition of the Tao Te Ching, it's not the only text that people read in traditional China, but it was the first text that everybody read. Today, it's the only text that we really read, unless you're part of Taoist religion or something else. The Xiang'er commentary was never read because it was lost. We just found it recently. And Lao Tzu's Tao Te Ching, we see it through, as I said, 2 excavated versions. One is called the Ma Wang Gui Lao Tzu. We found that in 1972. And then the Guodian Lao Tzu. We found that in 1992. And very few people have ever even do research on this that you ever read about. It's my primary field of research. This is why I maybe talk about this stuff in this way. Because people are reading that Guodian Lao Tzu as if it turned into He Shangong's, and it didn't. They're separate versions altogether. So He Shangong, that when you read the Tao Te Ching, that's what you read. So this is He Shangong's version of chapter 25. I'm going to show you how it's different in Lao Tzu's version and how it's different in the Xiang'er version, right? So this comes as a surprise. If you study the Tao Te Ching, this will really be surprising. Anyway, okay, so He Shangong's text, the text of Tao Te Ching 25. There's a thing born before heaven and earth. So you get the metaphysics, right? Here's this Tao existing by itself in eternity, empty and still, stands alone, and it doesn't change. eternity, infinity, all this sort of thing. It moves and cycles. It's never threatened. It never comes to an end. It's the mother of heaven and earth. It's where the world comes from, it's where all things come from. I don't know its name, so I just call it the Tao. It doesn't have a Tao. It doesn't have a name. How could it have a name? They say the same thing in Christian and Jewish religion. There's God, but his name isn't God. He doesn't have a name. He's like too sacred for a name. It's the same idea with Tao. It's so big that there's no single name that you could ever give to it. So we just call it the Tao. And if I'm forced to give it a name, I just call it the great Tao. Okay, we call it great. What does it mean that it's great? It means that it penetrates, and that it penetrates means that it goes far away. Going far away means that it returns. So when scholars write about Taoist philosophy, so many of them write about this chapter, what's going on in this chapter. So many people who write about this chapter write about these two lines. So I'm not going to really talk about what they mean because people have so many things to say about it. Then we get to this part. The Tao is great, heaven is great, earth is great, and the king also is great. The center of the realm, these are the four greats, and the king occupies one place among them. Okay, so notice this, the Tao is great, heaven, earth, and king. So let's look at what Lao Tzu says. Lao Tzu says, okay, so the words are the same. It says Dao Dao, Qi Da, Dao Da, Tian Da, Di Da, Wang Ye Da. So the words are the same, but the order is different. So Tian Da, Qi Da, Dao Da, Ran Da. So you notice a couple things here, right? First is the order. The Tao is not first. Second, it's not about the king, it's about humans. Third, although it's the same Chinese term, it's verbal, right? It's not describing heaven, earth, and the Tao. It's describing what they do. They make great. Heaven makes great. Earth makes great. The Tao makes great. Humans make great. How do they make great? How do these four make great? What is it that they make great? The myriad beings, all living things. How does heaven